So ever since the FTX collapse, everybody has been wondering, is Binance next? Are they solvent? Did they take a hit from the FTX collapse? If so, how big? Like, what's going on there? Like, should we worry? Nobody knows. And I've seen tons and tons of FUD all over Twitter about it. And so what I want to do is I've got a good thread here breaking down what exactly is going on with Binance to get you guys up to speed on their situation. We're going to break down that thread. I also have a tweet at the end that complements the thread pretty well. So make sure you stick around to the end to get the full story of what is happening with Binance currently. Now, before we get into that, guys, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already for me. So, okay. We have a thread from Genevieve Rock-Decter, who is, according to her Twitter account, a CFA. And for those of you who don't know what a CFA is a chartered financial analyst. It's like the highest certification that you can get in finance, basically. So we assume that she knows her stuff, and I think the thread here does a pretty good job at outlining the story of FTX currently. She starts it off, she says, "What's going on with Binance? Here is what I know. Remember when Binance released proof of reserves to calm the market? Well, the accounting firm that helped with that, Mazars Group, deleted the proof of reserves from its website, and Mazars Group is pausing all work with Binance and its other crypto clients." Now, a lot of people have been like, oh my God, Mazars Group, they saw something with Binance that they didn't like, and all of a sudden they're deleting everything, and it's because Binance is insolvent, and that's been the conclusion that a lot of people have been drawing. What I really think is going on here is that Mazars Group saw what happened with FTX, and I don't know if FTX was a client of theirs or not, but what I think is going on here is that they just don't want to be on the hook for crypto exchanges going out of business. They just don't have the know-how yet to do an actual audit of a crypto exchange. Now, a lot of people have been debating, was what Mazars Group did even actually an audit? I think that in technical terms, no, it wasn't an audit. It was more of a breakdown of financials, but if you guys don't know, a crypto exchange is like the structure of it is super, super convoluted. Like there's so much going on. There's tons and tons of wallets that they operate out of. And so it's really hard for these firms to know like which of these are the exchanges wallets, which are customers, which ones do they actually have the private seed phrases to. So, control over which ones are counterparty wallets. Like it's so hard to track all this. And without having like regulation to say that this is how an exchange needs to operate, it's not like a bank where they can walk in and they have, it's a very uniform process to audit. It's not like that. They have to kind of come up with their own method. And I just don't think that a lot of these firms feel comfortable doing that, which I think is exactly what Mazars Group is seeing here is like, look, we don't want to be on the hook for a crypto exchange going out of business and for, regulators to point to us and say, look, you looked at the financials and told everyone it was okay. They just don't want to have that exposure. So I think they're just backing out of the crypto space in general. And it really doesn't have anything to do with Binance. So I'm taking this with a grain of salt. Last year, Sam Bankman-Fried bought out CZ's stake in FTX. It was a $2.1 billion transaction, but CZ says that they only have about $500 million of that left since it was in FTT. Also, CZ says that they, quote unquote, actually forgot about that $500 million for a while. Is forgetting about a $500 million supposed to make me feel more confident in their ability to properly run an exchange? So for those of you who don't know, CZ and Binance were early seed investors in FTX, and FTX ended up cashing out CZ's position in their exchange. So they bought them out. It was for $2.1 billion, and that was divvied up between, from my understanding, mostly FTT as well as some BUSD, which is Binance's stablecoin, and BNB, which is Binance's exchange token. So it was kind of divvied up amongst the three, and I think it was mostly weighted in FTT. So they said that they have about $500 million of FTT left, which is effectively worth $0 now, which was the same $500 million that they, like CZ tweeted about dumping that caused the whole FTX cascading fiasco. So again, this is that same $500 million that's basically worth nothing now, but from my understanding, they did get paid out in quite a bit of the other tokens that they had. Now, you could do the math here and say, okay, well, 2.1 billion, that means they have 1.6 billion cashed out already. Is that right? I'm not exactly sure what the structure of that was. But to Genevieve's point here, the fact that they forgot about it is kind of a red flag in my eyes. Like, you don't want to see an exchange forgetting about money, especially $500 million. Like, And I don't know if CZ said this like out of like to play like, oh, we got so much money that we didn't notice 500 million because that's just couch cushion money. I don't know if that's the like nature of how he said it or if he was legitimately they forgot. Again, I don't know on that. But people are asking the question, could Binance be on the hook to pay that $2.1 billion back to FTX victims? It could be viewed as fraudulent conveyance, and the bankruptcy courts can often claw back transactions years after the fact. So she posted a news clip, which I'm not going to cover in this video or post in this video. If you guys want to see it, I'll link it down below, the whole thread, so you can watch it. We've got another clip that we're going to touch on, but basically all CZ says is like, he talks about the 500 million that they forgot about, and then gets asked, could you handle 2.1 billion in withdrawals? And that's where this next video comes into play.
We want to be transparent. We want to set the golden standard for reliability, solidness in this space.
So do it. Would you be able to handle it if somebody asked you for $2.1 billion back? Would that be okay? Would you be able to still withstand things?
We're financially okay.
Including you have $2.1 billion to give away. If somebody came to claw that back, you'd still be fine?
We'll let the lawyers handle it. We are financially strong.
And as you can see there, CZ he stumbles a little bit when asked if they could handle a $2.1 billion clawback. So if you guys aren't following, what she's basically saying here is like, look, if regulators somewhere, in a country deem that Binance needs to pay back that $2.1 billion, do they have enough in funds to be able to pay that out and stay solvent? If that clawback came around, which is a possibility, could they handle it? Now, CZ sort of takes the political approach here and the safe legal approach here and says like, I'll let the attorneys handle that, which a lot of people, saw as a red flag, which I can understand. You want a CEO of an exchange to come out and say, yeah, we can handle that. It would be no problem at all. That's the response you're hoping for. But even if he said that, like, can we actually believe that? Like, I mean, when you look at Sam Bankman-Fried and what happened with FTX, like, he said sort of the same thing, and it was a total lie. So does it really matter if he comes out and says, yes, we can handle that? Or, to me, it doesn't really matter. I'm looking more at the analytical piece, like, what are they doing? Prove it, basically. Like, I want to have proof that you can handle this. But again, a lot of people have been reading this as a red flag. I think that CZ is really just taking the legal approach here. He doesn't want to be on the hook for anything he says in this interview and cause a narrative to spin out of control. So I think that's the reason why he took this approach. Whether it was good or bad, again, is debatable. In that same interview, CZ insists that the audited financials are coming, but that just a few hours later, we hear that the accounting firm Mazars Group is cutting ties with Binance, and she quote tweets a tweet that shows the Mazars Group website down for Binance's audit or whatever you want to call it. Again, we already touched on this, so again, I don't think that this was necessarily related to Binance itself. We've also learned that Binance has seen billions in net withdrawals this week. However, they haven't paused withdrawals or appeared to have had problems processing withdrawal requests. So again, yeah, they've seen lots and lots of withdrawals. We have a tweet that we're going to cover at the end of this that shows just how many withdrawals they've been processing. And yeah, there hasn't been any issues. Things have gone on well. They've been able to replenish, they've seen lots of USDT withdrawals and they were able to replenish those. So, no concerns really popping up there. So what's going on here? There are definitely some red flags. 1, evasive answers from CZ. 2, the promise of a full audit sometime in the future. 3, assurances that Binance is financially strong without any specific evidence. So, yeah, I mean, CZ's being pretty vague, whether that's because there's actually concern there or if he's just trying to not give any specifics because he doesn't want to be on the hook for things. Like, whether that's good or bad, I don't know. Like I said, I guess only time will tell. The promise of a full audit sometime in the future, I'll take that with, everyone always promises audits, so I'll take that with a grain of salt. And the assurances that Binance is financially strong with any specific evidence is kind of true. They did have the Mazars Group report, which I don't have because their website is down, but it was more of a financial breakdown of Binance's position. From my understanding, the majority of what they're holding, they do have a lot of cash on hand, but we're gonna touch on their holdings in a second here. One of the big concerns is that even if Binance is correctly collateralized, that could change quickly if there's a run on the bank or if one of Binance's largest reserve holdings has issues. And she quote tweets a Mike Alfred tweet which says, More than 70% of Binance's reserves are in BNB, BUSD, and Tether. This is a literal disaster waiting to happen. What's going to light the match? So BNB, again, is Binance's exchange token. BUSD is Binance's stablecoin. Tether is, of course, independent. But the two Binance tokens are what concern people the most, right? Because basically what that is a bet on themselves. Because BNB being the exchange token, it's directly correlated to Binance's performance. And Binance USD or BUSD, their dollar token is, we've seen so many stable coins go absolutely like just get decimated, that are backed by like business entities where there's one central entity that provides the value to that stable coin. Someone like, USDC, they're basically a mutual fund. Like you put your you put your money in there, and they kind of diversify it out into a bunch of holdings. Or a money market fund, I guess is a better way to put it. So it's got the reserves and they're held in what are basically cash equivalents, in most cases. So we don't really know what's going on with Binance's USD token, though. We got to assume that if Binance struggles, that token will struggle. And same with BNB. So when times are good, things will be fine. But when times are bad, can they handle it? Like if one piece of this breaks, it could tumble the whole thing down, which I think is what most people's concern is here, given that most of the collateral is in those tokens. This is a classic scenario for crypto exchanges. Everything is fine until it's not. If Binance has the confidence of the market, then everything will be fine. If stablecoins and Binance's reserve hold their peg, everything will be fine. Again, but if they break, everything breaks with it. That's the concern here. But look, Jim Cramer is bearish on Binance, so maybe everything will be just fine. And then she quote tweets a tweet from Jim Cramer that says, I would trust my money more in DraftKings than I would Binance. She includes that because if you guys don't know, Jim Cramer makes all these crazy calls, and basically the market goes against him every single time. At this point, I think Jim Cramer is just like shooting in the dark. I don't put any weight on this comment. I think she put it in here more as a joke. But for what it's worth, 2 days before that, Jim Cramer was talking about feeling reassured by CZ. So I don't know what he's got going on in his head. That dude flip-flops more than anyone I know. So getting to the exchange withdrawals, we have a tweet from Duo9, which says Binance has processed $6 billion in withdrawals in the past 24 hours. They also processed $6 billion in deposits from their wallets to pay everybody. FTX was already insolvent after the first few billion. This is a good stress test. Only the best can survive in a bear market. And then you can see in this image, they've processed $6.5 billion in outflows with $6.6 billion in inflows. For those of you who don't know, exchanges, again, they hold money in a bunch of different wallets, a lot of them off exchange, so they have to deposit those back and replenish different wallets in order to process people's withdrawals, which is probably why there's so much on the inflow side here. Now, with all of that being said, guys, it's important to note that every single exchange has its breaking point, okay? Some are just bigger than others. So it's clear here that Binance has a ton more money than FTX ever did. They have more collateral than FTX ever did currently. But they, if withdrawals got to an astronomical level, they all have their breaking point. So Binance could break, and same with Coinbase or any other exchange. They can all break. So it's important to note that. Again, that there's always a limit there. And I think that's what everybody's trying to figure out is where is that line? Where is that limit? As we can see, 6 billion wasn't enough to put them kaput. So they're doing okay there. Now, this isn't the same as them paying out 2 billion because this is effectively people's money. When you're processing deposits and withdrawals, that's other people's money. But if they had to actually take $2.1 billion and pay that back to FTX customers, again, that has to come out of their own money, their own reserves. So that's where people are questioning, can they handle that? It's not the same as the ins and outflows that we're seeing here. And if you guys have been following me and watching my previous videos that I did on other exchanges, you know my position is always, if there's any speculation that an exchange might be insolvent, it's safest to just pull your money off and wait, which I think is what's going on here, is that you have all these withdrawals. People are spooked. They figure it's just easier to self-custody their tokens for the time being, and they'll put them back on there if things turn around and we get confidence in Binance. And that's the safest route, guys, because you pull it off, and if the exchange collapses, you just saved all that money. If it doesn't collapse and things start to turn around, great, you deposit it back on the exchange and you're back up and running. There's no harm, no foul in that. So I am of the again, more conservative approach of holding my money in case, situations like this. I don't want to see any speculation about the exchange that I'm using. Now, if you are a trader and you need to hold money on an exchange, you can do that. Just don't put any more on the exchange than you can lose. Like if you lost everything on the exchange tomorrow, obviously it would suck, but would you still be okay? If the answer to that is yes, then you're doing fine. And also diversify your exchanges. You don't have to use just one exchange. There's lots of exchanges out there, even still. So, like trade on, if you got to put a lot of money on, put it into like 3 different exchanges. Now, I will say if Binance goes under, that would be the most catastrophic thing ever to happen in the crypto space. That would absolutely decimate a lot of other exchanges just because of how big Binance is. So I don't think anybody is hoping for Binance to go out of business. That would be absolutely terrible for the entire crypto space. But again, a safer approach, if you really have to put your money on an exchange, it's better to diversify it amongst a few exchanges. That way, if one goes out, you can withdraw from the others and protect that money and diversify a little bit there. So guys, I wanted to cover this all with you because, again, this has been something that a lot of people have been talking about. I've seen lots of FUD and stuff that's really just not true out there. I'm not, again, I take a very conservative approach about these sorts of things, and I'm not biased in any way. I don't use Binance, so I'm not biased towards Binance doing good or bad. Like, I really am indifferent about the facts that I look at here. I'm looking at it totally from a factual basis. What am I seeing? Of course, I don't want Binance to go out of business. But at the current point, I got to say that there's not a lot of evidence that they are in financial trouble. There's just not. And so, I'm taking everything out there with a little bit of a grain of salt, but I am still very, keeping a very keen eye on what is going on out in the Binance world. I'm keeping a close eye on their wallets, like their ins and outflows, how much they're processing, if they're pausing or not. And I wanted to share this information with you guys so you can have a good foundational understanding of what is happening with Binance currently, without having to sift through all the Twitter garbage that's out there right now. So guys, if this is your first time to the channel, please like and subscribe. And with that being said, I will see you all next time.